It's like the news, but for nerds. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Nerdvengers, what is up? It is Josh, and this is your nerdy news rundown for Wednesday, May 26, 2021. A very juicy nerdy news rundown for you today. We've got a crazy story about Zack Snyder's Star Wars movie being changed into a new IP for Netflix. We're going to talk about that. Very excited about that story. There's a juicy bit about J.J. Abrams making comments about the sequel trilogy. Some people say he was throwing some shade over at Rian Johnson. But let's first begin with Loki information. Ladies and gentlemen, it is all about Loki from Marvel Studios. Loki is currently still trending in the top 10 in the United States as I am saying this or recording this video, with like over 60,000 tweets for the day. And this had to do with a number of different things. A new emoji was released. There was some set photos released. But we wanted to talk about comments made from the writer on the Loki series, hinting at connections to Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness. I'm checking this out on Total Film. It says here, Loki writer, our aim with Loki series was for it to have wide-reaching ramifications across the MCU. It's ramifications, sorry. I fumbled that. And now I've brought more attention to it by talking to you guys about it. All right. This is an exclusive for them, and they get a connection here between Loki and Doctor Strange too. Now, here is something interesting that Michael Waldron, the writer of Loki, had to say when asked about connections between Loki and Doctor Strange 2. He said here, that would be crazy conjecture, laughing while talking to Total Film magazine. For the new issue, all of these stories in their own way are interconnected and have ramifications. I think that certainly our aim with Loki series was for it to have wide-reaching ramifications across the MCU moving forward. So, was I having to clean up some of the messes that I made with Loki? Maybe so. The article goes on to say, if there are any timeline grievances, then surely a Loki Season 2 would be in order. Will a follow-up happen? At this point, I have learned that for me to have any expectations is futile, and a fool's errand, Tom Hiddleston said. Having just said goodbye to the character once, twice, 3 times, I do not know what the future holds, but I'm excited to find out. I think we could never have seen 10 years ahead. He pauses, grins, however. That would be to underestimate the intelligence of Kevin Feige. Maybe he did see into the future, and he predicted all this, and, in fact, he works for the TVA. And reality is unfolding as it should, and we're all just along for the ride. So, frankly, a couple of cool things in there. I was just talking on the morning stream over on our live streaming channel. We're soon going to be doing multiple streams a day. You're definitely going to be over on the live streaming channel. But I was saying on the morning stream that a member of the Team Lavis Black Band has been saying for a long time that he believes there's going to be a season 2 of Loki. And I was even talking to him about this earlier before the stream this morning, just sort of looking at the evidence that he had, some of the articles that he had pulled up. And it certainly looks like there's a lot of compiling evidence over the last 6 to 9 months that suggests Marvel is interested in doing Loki Season 2. I think it might actually freaking happen. And the sort of coy comments made by Tom Hiddleston about that and about Kevin Feige, they don't disprove anything, and they actually make me more excited for what could happen in a Loki Season 2 and the possibility of him coming back to fix some of these problems. However, it is also interesting to note that the writer of Loki, Waldron, is saying that he might have made some messes that he's going to have to clean up. Well, what is the next project that he could be working on to clean up? Well, it's none other than Doctor Strange 2 with Benedict Cumberbatch. These two have classically tangled before in Thor Ragnarok. It was an awesome scene, and they've tangled before in the comics, and it's very, very fun. I'd love to see more of those two characters interact, and there's a lot of rumors that Loki and that Tom Hiddleston Loki character will show up in future MCU projects, perhaps even Doctor Strange 2 into the Multiverse of Madness. With the Loki series going into different timelines, seeing branch realities from timelines, and Doctor Strange dealing with crazy things that are going on in the multiverse, and Shuma Gorath basically breaking through multiverses, it is possible that all of this stems back to Endgame and crazy events that happened when the Avengers were trying to save their reality, therefore throwing the entire multiverse into chaos. And so it's very possible that all of this will be connected. Again, just a little something said from the writer of Loki, but a possibility of a Doctor Strange to Loki connection being had. I think it's time to get hyped on these theories once again. You let me know in the comment section below, what do you make of this? What do you make of Loki? Freaking trending all freaking day. People are very excited for that show. I can't wait to be watching it and doing watch parties with all of you. And now let's talk freaking J.J. Abrams, man. Like, why? Why do you have to say this? Like, legitimately, I mean, say, whatever. I'm looking over at an article on Collider. It says here, J.J. Abrams reflects on Star Wars and when it's critical to have a plan. I do think that there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going. Now, here's a quote from that article, and it sort of explains where JJ's at with all this. He says here, I've been involved in a number of projects that have been, in most cases, series that have ideas that begin the thing where you feel like you know where it's going to go, and sometimes it's an actor who comes in, other times it's a relationship that, as written, doesn't quite work, and things that you think are going to just be so well received just crash and burn, and other things like make you think, oh, that's a small moment, or that's a one episode character, suddenly become a hugely important part of the story. I feel like what I've learned as a lesson a few times now, and it's something that especially in this pandy year, working with writers has become more clear, the lesson is that you have to plan things as best you can. And you always need to be able to respond to the unexpected. And the unexpected can come in all sorts of forms. And I do think that there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going. Abrams acknowledged that sometimes the plan is the thing that gets in the way. And he's quoted by saying, there are projects that I've worked on where we had some issues, but we hadn't worked through them enough. Sometimes we had some ideas, but then we weren't allowed to do them the way we wanted to. I've had all sorts of situations where you plan things in a certain way and you suddenly find yourself doing something that's 180 degrees different. And then sometimes it really works well and you feel like, wow, that really came together. Other times you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is where we are. And sometimes when it's not working out, it's just what you planned. And other times it's not working out because you didn't have a plan. But the article says, ultimately, the filmmaker said that he's learned the hard way that it's better to have a plan and be willing to, or able to change it than not have one at all. You just never know. But having a plan, I have learned, in some cases, the hard way is the most critical thing, because otherwise you don't know what you're setting up. You don't know what to emphasize because you don't know the inevitable of the story. You're just as good as your last sequence or effect or joke or whatever, but you want to be leading to something inevitable. Now, it's important to note that this was all said in response to a question that J.J. Abrams was asked about whether or not he thought the sequel trilogy would have benefited from a plan. So he is literally talking in some ways about the sequel trilogy during the entirety of this very long-winded answer, and it does seem, though he's saying there was no plan, it seems like he's kind of admitting that there was no plan, which is so interesting and such a far cry from what he said leading up to the Rise of Skywalker about how Palpatine was definitely in the plan, etc., etc. So, I don't know for sure if you can say that he was definitively explaining anything about the secrets behind the scenes for the sequel trilogy. I don't know if you can definitively say he was throwing shade at Rian Johnson or trying to protect his own branding. As I'm sure he's noticed, his image and name are still not that well respected online right now, and there's still a lot of people angry about the Rise of Skywalker. And as he moves forward with his projects over at Warner Brothers, he might be thinking like, hey man, maybe I should answer this, maybe I should say this to try to indicate that it wasn't my freaking fault. Star Wars fandom predictably reacted, well, awfully to this. J.J. Abrams was trending throughout the morning, and now Rian Johnson is trending in the afternoon with the same old debate going on Star Wars Twitter, fans lashing out at each other about which was the worst film, who was the director that ultimately ruined the sequel trilogy, or whether or not the sequel trilogy was even ruined. There's a few people still, cheering it on, talking about how it was an amazing work of cinematic masterpiece storytelling, franchise guiding, whatever. I don't know what's going on with those folks, but that's okay. But the main thing that's been funny on Twitter is people arguing now about whose fault the ultimate failure of the sequel trilogy is. A lot of people are saying, no, that's not the fact that there was no plan. It's the fact that J.J. Abrams didn't organically pick up any of the beats that Rian Johnson had established in the second movie and try to just undo things. It was really like a retcon sort of fanboy checklist thing. And honestly, what I'll say for this is, I have really flipped on Rise of Skywalker. There are parts of that movie that I really enjoyed, but overall, I think it was a terrible ending to any trilogy, but to the trilogy that it belonged to. And it just didn't serve to wrap up, I think, even that trilogy or the whole of Star Wars. It is the ultimate slap in the face that Lucasfilm refers to that as the end of the Skywalker saga. No way. But all fans just automatically, I think, don't believe that. You know what I mean? We just take that for what it was, marketing hyperbole, because this movie does not hold a candlestick to the incredible ending of Return of the Jedi. But having said that, it's at the very least interesting to talk about how J.J. Abrams just makes simple comments like this, and yet the wound within the Star Wars fandom and the sort of anger and confusion about the sequel trilogy, whether it's people that don't like The Last Jedi or people that don't like The Rise of Skywalker, that pain is still raw as hell. I know some people just get exhausted about talking about Star Wars. And this is part of the reason why it's such a big freaking deal to so many passionate fans that, like, JJ just says something like this, and yeah, it's a little bit of a clickbaity headline by Collider, but whatever, dude. People went crazy for this thing. A lot of Star Wars content creators are talking about it. It has reopened wounds, and so, hey, while you're out there hurting and yelling and being angry at each other, why don't you let us know in the comment section? Do you think the lack of plan was the problem? Do you think it was Rian Johnson that ruined the sequel trilogy? Or do you think it was JJ Abrams that ruined the sequel trilogy? What are your thoughts on all this craziness coming out from Collider's interview with J.J. Abrams? Let us know in the comment section below. And now let's get into the story that I've been really excited to talk about. It might not be the biggest, craziest story in the world. I may have clickbaited you to get you in here because, no, Zack Snyder is not actually making a Star Wars film unless Lucasfilm actually changes their mind, wakes the F up, and does it. And that would be like... But instead, it is being reported that Zack Snyder is looking to adapt an actual Star Wars story and script that he wrote and pitched to Lucasfilm. And I want to talk more about that right now. I'm reading this on murphysmultiverse.com. It says Zack Snyder reworking an old Star Wars script into an original film. The article says, it looks like Zack Snyder may be taking us to a galaxy far, far away. It's just not the one you're probably thinking of right now. The director is well known for his forays into the world of superheroes, having famously tackled both Watchmen and Justice League over the course of his career. Now, Snyder is stepping away from established franchises and getting back to basics. Netflix recently released his first original feature in years, a zombie flick called Army of the Dead, and now the filmmaker has revealed he's working on his next major project. He shared the first news while being on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast. Snyder confirmed his script was originally intended to be a part of the Star Wars universe, telling a brand new story set in its own corner of the celebrated timeline. Unfortunately, the story concept, which was heavily inspired by Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, never made it past Lucasfilm. So Snyder has set out to restructure the script and rewrite it to become an original project. I've been working on it away from the Star Wars universe on my own as a sci-fi thing. It's still a sci-fi thing. It's the same story. Now I'm just going to let Star Wars be Star Wars. This isn't the first time the director has mentioned playing in the Star Wars universe. In May, he shared his interest in a project, but pointed out that he wouldn't survive the process. His film would have not been the first Star Wars story to take inspiration from Kurosawa or Seven Samurai, as franchise creator George Lucas is known to have often cited the film when it comes to Star Wars A New Hope. It remains to be seen if Snyder or the sci-fi movie gets greenlit, but here's to hoping it happens sooner than later. So shout out to Josh Horowitz, shout out to that podcast, shout out to murphysmultiverse.com just for being a website that I like, and shout out to freaking Zack Snyder, man. This is insanity to me, okay? So let's just clarify what this means. This means Zack was working on a story that he had an entire script for, and he had a whole pitch for this, and he really legitimately wanted to make a Star Wars movie. He had a Zack Snyder version of Star Wars that he wanted to do in his own little pocket of the Star Wars universe that would be adapting Kurosawa's friggin' Seven Samurai. Absolute insanity. I love Kurosawa films. I absolutely love Star Wars, and I'm a super big fan of Zack Snyder, so you know I'm pretty excited about this, and it's just exciting for a number of different reasons. I mean, I think the ship has sailed as far as Zack coming into Lucasfilm. And frankly, right now, Lucasfilm is in kind of a mess, in my opinion, as we just talked about with the story before, and many stories in the past couple of months. But I just generally think that this will be good for Star Wars fans because, frankly, if Star Wars itself is not going to push limits and give us some crazy new stuff when it comes to the galaxy far, far away, we may have to look to projects like this. And what a better recipe for a Netflix, like, awesome franchise, right? You've got Zack Snyder, who's got this huge fan base. People absolutely love him, right? You've got Star Wars, one of the biggest IPs on the planet, but it is currently going through some trouble. And Zack, I mean, there's nothing stopping him from literally coming out and saying, yeah, I'm reworking a Star Wars movie to be its own original IP, and I'm going to pitch it into Netflix and hopefully make it. That's freaking fantastic. Like, dude, new IPs are sort of hard to come by as far as ones that are really popular. A lot of stuff is getting adapted. You know, a lot of stuff's getting remade. Hollywood's in a weird place. This is huge for Netflix. As a massive fan of all the different elements that are involved in this story, I'm going to be carefully eyeing it up. And man, it might be my new favorite franchise. You never know, man. Star Wars is very close to my heart, and I love what Zack Snyder brings with sensibilities to his cinematic process. It's fan-freaking-tastic stuff. So kudos, man. I mean, damn, it's a real good get for Netflix. So I'm pretty excited for it. You let me know what you guys think about that, and I will be talking with Al Schuler about this later behind the scenes with the Nerd Avengers, and we might clip out a portion of that live stream and put it on this channel. So look for that tomorrow because we're both huge fans of the Snyder Cut, and we're both huge fans of Star Wars. This is just really getting me excited. So I'm pumped. Want to know what y'all think about it? Let me know in the comment section below. And that's going to do it for your Nerdy News Rundown today. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and keep coming back at around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to get your Nerdy News Rundown each and every day. And make sure you're subscribed to the live streaming channel where we are soon going to be doing multiple streams a day covering all the nerdy news out there in the world. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.